get that done. And then we also have a slideshow that we're going to show you as well. So if you just give us a minute. There we are. All right. And so I think starting us off is Miss Susan. Can we go to the next slide, Chris? All right. Susan, you're up.
Great. Hello, friends. So as you can see, I'm going to actually take this off because I can't really see the slides. Okay, good. Hi. So as you can see, this is our current board. So I'm chair, and this is my last year to serve on the board. You can see our years on the side on the right there. And Dawn is our vice chair. And Justin, who is not able to be here today, is our secretary. And then we also have Russell and Judy. And Ron and Melissa are both of our Lovers Lane members, Inwood Campus. And then Rosie and Rachel. So you can see our years on the right there. Next slide. Oh. Why is Tom not listed was the question?
Right. Yeah, so why is Tom Hudspeth not listed? Tom is definitely welcome at all of our board meetings. And I think that was just not put in the bylaws that the pastor of deaf. So we have ex officio, so by right of their position on staff, they come to the board meetings. They are non-voting members. So Stan, Andy, and Melissa are not voting members. The bylaws did not place the pastor of congregational care and deaf ministry as a part of that. I wasn't a part of that decision because all those were decided beforehand. So, can that be changed? Yeah. I mean, anything can be changed. Yeah. Here, Joe, can you speak on the microphone? So, because we're recording this, and so, whoever's watching won't hear you, so go ahead.
It just occurs to me that Tom's relationship, obviously, with the deaf ministry is a separate issue, but as congregational care, it seems like that would be an appropriate addition. Not to put something else on you, Tom, but it seems like it's excluding one of our senior people.
When the bylaws are written, a lot of that discussion went on, and this was kind of put forward by the Lovers Lane crowd as originally, and the congregational care function at that time was being taken by the senior pastor, so there wasn't that position even here at the time. So that's how it happened, and as whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent can be changed, so be it.
I would like to recommend, if it's appropriate, that be at least reconsidered.
Well, I appreciate that, Joe. Thank you. And well, Tom, it looks like you're about to get into another meeting. So I'll tell you what. So Don and maybe Susan are going to know the most about how to change the bylaws. What I'd like is for Don and Susan to have a conversation with Tom about what that would look like and about what the expectations of that would be. And then pending, I think it's pending Tom's approval. I have no qualms about Tom being on that board. I think, so if that's the case, then I think the board, one of the agenda items on the October meeting would be that thing. So, do you have anything you want to say about that, Tom? He's speechless. All right. Very good. Thank you, Joe, for raising that up.
Next slide. So the members are nominated by the Lovers Lane UMC Nominations Committee, and then they're voted on by the Lovers Lane Charge Conference, which of course includes the Walnut Hill Church Charge Conference as well. If you're a member of the church, you're a member of the voting body of Charge Conference. Just to get that recorded. Next slide. This is just a screenshot of the bylaws, and of course, they can be adapted. I'm not going to read this. Next slide. Okay, so just to give you a snapshot of what the meetings sort of look like, this was our official agenda last time. So we go over August financials. Our meetings are typically the first Sunday of the month, so we don't always have the previous month's financials, but this, in September, we delayed it due to the holiday. So we got our August financials that Patty presents, and then we always go over what our year's goals and initiatives are. So we got an update on the neighboring initiative, the new community initiative, and property development. And then the church program calendar, we always go up over whatever updates we might have or anything coming up. So for Christmas Eve, we discussed our worship time was going to be at 5, and then we had a question about who would be available on Christmas Day, and if that was a good number and somebody that would be able to leave that, we would consider having worship at 11, since Christmas Day does fall on a Sunday this year. So of those who are here, who would come to a Christmas Day service if we had one that morning?
And just an FYI, the journey class is not going to have Sunday school.
So a few Sunday school classes will probably not meet. It's Christmas Day. Okay. Okay, that's good feedback. Nobody here would be able to attend. Did you have your hand up? Joe, potentially, yeah, Joanne would. That's okay. We're just trying to get an idea about the need for that and the desire for that. Okay. And then staff updates are always on our agenda. Yes? The question was, is this the beginning of the end of the candlelight Christmas service? I don't know the answer to that. I know that this year, Andy and Melissa are needing to be on Inwood campus at 7, and so we had the option of either 5 or 9, and I chose 5. So it is this year. It is this year. I don't know about coming years, but it is this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, Sheila. I think the question is, and we'll talk in a little bit about our ministry being community-inspired, member-owned, and staff-equipped. That's the ministry that we're going to do, which is part of the reason we ask you if, hey, would you be a part of a Christmas Day service? So when you say a candlelight service, you're talking about an 11 o'clock to midnight service. Because we have candlelight, I know. We're having a Christmas Eve 5 o'clock service. And we'll have candlelight, we'll use candles there in that service, but you're specifically asking about a service that goes to midnight. And I think the question is that something our membership will be a part of? There is an 11 o'clock service at the Inwood Road campus, which is not the same, right? I mean, that's just not. And so the answer is I don't know. You're the first person that's really mentioned that to me, and so I haven't heard that be a large desire of our congregation. But I've been wrong once before. Yeah. Thank you.
Just once. And then staff updates are always a part of our agenda if needed, and we talked about Tasha's rolling over and who was going to take part in keeping up with the kids ministry, and Kay Eck over at the executive pastor over at Inwood campus. We're looking to fill both the children's director at Inwood campus as well as Walnut Hill. So it's kind of a joint search going on right now. Really? It sounds very loud to me. Is that better? Slow it down. Okay. So staff updates as needed are on our agenda, and thank you. This month we talked about Tasha leaving as children's director or coordinator, and we are searching for that role in conjunction with Lovers Lane because they're also looking for a full-time children's director. Ours is a part-time position. Melissa and Kay are taking over that role in the meantime. So they're developing all the information that's going on for Children's Church and that kind of thing. And can I just say thank you to developing that Children's Church idea? I think it's really fun. We've seen an increase in just children in worship in general, and I know that they're having a really good time with that, so I'm happy about that. Any other questions about our just sort of structured meeting? Okay, next slide. So this is a very, very busy slide. Just take a look at it. Just sort of let it wash over you. When Scott was appointed to First Church Richardson, this was the transition idea. And so if you think about these, if you look at the solid lines, those are who are here on staff at Walnut Hill. And those are really the point persons for that particular role that Scott previously filled. And then if you look at the dashed lines, that's kind of the backup person. So whether that's the dashed lines are the person that would support the main point person. So the solid lines are the main point person, dashed lines are backup support. So worship and production, that's going to be primarily Melissa. She's filling those roles. If you ever have a role in worship, you'll get an email from her saying, this is your role, your day and time, please be here. And then, of course, with support from Chris, who's managing our tech team, and Jeff Jones on Inwood campus. And communication, this is going to be primarily Chris. This is a new role for him. He has a pretty full communications marketing background, so he's going to step into that role here for us at Walnut Hill, and that's going to be a lot of big support for Andy and Melissa. And then, of course, Andy and Jeff as well on Inwood campus will back that up. Staff management, that is Melissa primarily, and administration, Chris. And creative school, that's going to be Melissa, along with, of course, Tammy, who's our new creative school director, but not a Walnut Hill Church employee. And then facilities and operations, that will stay with Chris. That's been primarily where he's focused his efforts in the last few months, but we will start really equipping more of our members to support him in that as well. Any questions on that? Yes, Becky.
Good. Yeah, so the question was, when it comes to promoting events and those kinds of things, where does that go? So up until last week, Chris's main responsibility was building and finances, working with Patty in finances. And what we asked and what has been approved now as of last week is that Chris's responsibilities will kind of morph into three main things. One is going to be managing a building maintenance team. Chris, are you doing anything really important behind that computer? Can you come up here for just a minute? I know you're doing something really important, but so three responsibilities that we see now for Chris's job. Chris is going to be working with a building maintenance team, a team of volunteers. Basically what Walnut Hill Church has done forever before we got here. So Chris is going to be helping run that team and making sure that that's well coordinated with the efforts that are going on at Lovers Lane. The second thing is going to be communications. Chris was helping with communications, but was not directing communications. From now on, Chris will be, as of last Thursday, Chris is now directing communications that's happening here on campus, which is going to be a huge thing, and you're going to hear more about how communications is going to be a top priority for us moving forward. And then the third thing is going to be what I've called the building and grounds vision. All right, so we can maintain our building all day long, but what we really need is somebody to have a vision for what does revenue-producing ministry look like here on this campus. Creative School is a great example of that, right? Creative School is a ministry that happens here. It provides affordable, quality childcare. It also produces revenue for our community and for our church. How can we do more of that kind of things? And if we were to ever build again, when we build again, what does that look like, right? Don't laugh at me, Joe. We're getting there. What does that look like? What do we need here in order to produce more revenue-producing ministry? So those are kind of three things that we've talked about, I feel like ad nauseum. Like every time Chris and I sat down, we were talking about that, but we've kind of moved into that. Do you want to say a few words about that?
Sure. Yeah, I'm really excited about being refocused. And I hate we have to use this, but it's good to capture for the people who want to listen. There's a reason why you all wanted to adopt merge with Lover's Lane. There's a reason why the members here kept things up the way they did. There's a reason why the creative school exists. There's a reason why Lindell retired and Tammy came on. There's a reason why Melissa was ordained, commissioned. There's a reason why all these things are happening. There's a reason why Scott went to Richardson. And the exciting thing is we're seeing kind of the culmination of a lot of those things where we're creating and trying to cast some new vision for what the possibilities are on this campus. This is a beautiful campus. It's amazing. And it's fraught with opportunity for developing further ministries of this church, but also in partnership with schools and ministries outside of these walls. And so that's an exciting prospect for me. I have a meeting on Monday with somebody from Thomas Jefferson to talk about having meetings here for the families of students who are new to the United States. So we're going to have a meeting in October in this room with those families. So it's exciting what is possible, and it takes a village to do it all. It takes Sheila, it takes a Don Moulton, it takes a Joe, it takes a Becky, it takes a Fran, it takes a Kathy, it takes a Donna, it takes everybody. But it's exciting because we've got all of the pieces that we need to make some really wonderful things happen on this campus and to sort of re-energize this whole community. It's going to be crazy when you see those students back at Thomas Jefferson and back at Cary. It's going to be the neighborhood. I know the neighborhood's going, oh my goodness, I can't believe we got to deal with that. But it's exciting because all of those students coming back means some things for us, that there are opportunities for us to minister in ways that we've not been able to since 2019, since the tornado hit. And that's really, really exciting. So that's part of the vision that Andy's talking about, that he and Melissa and Kay have talked about, and that I'm excited to be on board with for the future. So I could ramble on, but I'm going to go back to my spot.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Chris. Yes. Oh, TJ alum here.
And on North Texas Giving Day, the Alum Association raised $69,000. And we had $37,000 in matching funds. So there are things going on out there that are behind the scenes.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, and then next slide okay, again, wait. Next slide. I think I'm going to answer your question. Next slide. There we go. So, Tom continues to be congregational care and deaf ministry. He just did not take on any of the roles of Scott's former roles, so that's why he wasn't on that original slide. Now, was that your question or no? No, sort of. Okay. 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 Yeah, no, absolutely. Talking about Tom's validity in the church, absolutely. This was truly just when Scott left, like who's gonna take over what he does. So that's where this came from. But yes. Next slide. Okay, I think y'all have been asking questions along the way, but more questions? Yes, hi, Fran.
As I'm calling people every month who have missed church, I'm getting questions about the youth program, from preschool up to elementary school and junior high and high school. I don't know how to answer any of that. I don't know that we have a lot of youth here. I don't know if we're blending in with Lover's Lane. So if you can share what's going to be the future, we think, close in, for these age groups coming to church. Jill and CJ, they're asking if there's something here that they can come to, so that will help us know.
Yes, so I can give my experience, and then Andy can talk about going forward. So Ava's in 6th, and Cal's in 9th, and Lovers Lane calls it a student ministry instead of youth. So student ministry is 7th through 12th. And on Inwood campus, they've got various things in the morning. Here, Cal is, running tech and that kind of thing. So he's working when he's here. The students on Lovers Lane campus also have that opportunity to either work and serve or participate in whatever their class might be. And then on Sunday evenings, the youth get together, both campuses. It's been at Lovers Lane probably primarily, but there is a, Dallas Cowboys tailgate that's going to be here in a couple of weeks for all of the student ministry. So youth here is really pretty seamlessly rolled into student ministry there. The goal is, of course, to grow a program here. We don't have that yet, but that's the goal. And then for kids ministry, there are, again, Bede, Melissa, formerly Tasha and Kay, design lessons. So they have a Sunday school class they can go to. And then there is a preteen. So for CJ's age, there's a preteen group that meets once a month, again, typically over at Lovers Lane. So the same time that the youth or students meet, 5 to 7 on Sundays.
Yeah, so those are all the things that are happening now. So kids have a 9:30 Sunday school option and a kids' church option during worship. The kids' church option during worship, they come up for the children's moment, and we always tell them you can go back and sit with your families if that's what you and your family want, and we have activities for them to do, or they can go to kids' church. Bede is actually going to be working on developing a student ministry class at 9:30 for students. And so the goal is that our ministry would happen at Walnut Hill. So all the ministry, that pertains to people of Walnut Hill would happen at Walnut Hill. And so I would love to see eventually our student ministry go to the point where we will have student ministry that happens every Sunday evening here on campus. My goal is to have some kind of vacation Bible school here on campus this summer for our kids in our community and our neighborhood. And so we're moving more in that direction. Does that answer your question, Fran? Absolutely. Right. For sure. Yes, that's a great point, Fran. That's a great point. So Fran said it would be great to publicize that, what happens with kids and students in our publication, in our email, in our bulletin, et cetera. And I'll make sure that my communications director heard that. He got a wave, so all right.
Yeah, and that would cut down on the number of emails I get, because I get one from kids, and I get one from students, and I get one from here.
Too many emails.
It was just a joke. It was not pertinent. It wasn't that important. I get emails from students and kids and from Walnut Hill Church. So it would be nice to have all of that information in one spot. Okay. Yes, Joanne? Tonight at 6 to 8 is a dinner. Are we getting invited to dinner, Joanne?
Of course. But you wouldn't know it because nothing went out. I mean, I was here today. It wasn't really touched on. Yes, we have a flyer, a Living Undivided at Lovers Lane. And I've really been kind of, I don't want to say appalled, but really wondering if this will fall flat on its face, because there's hardly been anything mentioned about it. And it is going to be a dinner with frank discussion. We'll have speakers. And it's about, healing racial divides and living together. So what are we about? We're about that, And that's, I think, a major program. And it got zip coverage as far as if I wouldn't know anything about it. But, of course, I do. But if I didn't, I still wouldn't know much about it. And I probably wouldn't go. I surely wouldn't go tonight.
Yeah, Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I can hear that frustration. I think, again, this was a huge need that we have for communication, and that's why we're really happy that Chris is going to take that over. I'm sorry that happened for tonight, but I have very high hopes that that's going to be changing. Anyone else? Yeah? Okay. Next is Andy.
All right, so I've been sharing this with a couple of people on staff. Well, I've shared it with our staff and with our board, but I wanted to share just kind of where I think we're headed as a church. And I'm going to move through some of this stuff. I'm going to share, do we have any way to like collect an email from us? Can we like hand out just a piece of paper and everybody can write down their email so that I can share this with you? I don't want to keep us here for 2 hours, but I do want to be able to share this information with you about where I believe we're headed as a church. And so the big picture is that we live in a ripe neighborhood for ministry. And so, Chris, if you want to go to the next slide, I wanted to show you this statistic. If you draw a square from 635 down 35 across Northwest Highway and up DNT, within that square you have 64,000 people, and 72.5% of those people have no church home. This is based on demographic data from Mission Insight, which is a very reputable source that uses census data and all the other ways to verify that, which means that there are 46,000 people in our square, in our mission field, that do not have a church home. This means we can do something, right? I mean, if we got 1% of this, we're doing much better. And I want to point out to us that this is in the backyard of Watermark. All right, so we don't have any room to disparage other churches because there's plenty of fish in the sea. All right, there's plenty of mission work to be done. So this is where we are today. This is the mission field we're in. I wanted to paint a picture about where we are today in terms of kind of our general data here at Walnut Hill. And if we took kind of worship attendance and giving attendance, revenue attendance, it looks like this. Go ahead, Chris. And so this might be a confusing chart. This is the average worship per month over the last 5 years. All right, so this is probably data you might assume, but I wanted to point it out to you. The red line is this year. All right, can everybody see that? The red line is this year. So if you get all the way to August, you can see that we had a good August, a good July. We've actually kind of stayed pretty steady. April, we had, of course, Easter and Creative School Sunday back-to-back. Those helped our average quite a bit. But you can kind of see attendance varies in 2022, but is generally below previous years. This data includes deaf worship that happens at 9:30, as well as online worship. And I feel really good about our online attendance because all of those people are registered, right? So like we know who attended worship. It's not like we just got 50 clicks on Facebook and we counted those in our worship attendance. If we want to go to the next slide, Chris, about our revenue is below previous years, all right? And so again, we're the red line. We had a really good July and then a not so good August. Of course, the beginning of the year was generally really good, but we did not have as many beginning of the year gifts as we did in previous years. And so, giving varies month to month, but overall is behind on previous years. So that's where we are as a church, and so it's clear that we, need to move. But I wanted to take us back to that mission field slide real quick. Chris, can you go to the next slide? Just go forward. Yep. If all of our giving numbers and our revenue numbers were sky high, there would still be reason to continue to grow because of this number. Hey, guys. There would still be reason to know because of this number, right? As long as there are people in our backyard that don't have a church home, there is reason to grow. There is reason to do something. And that's what I really want to keep our focus on is that, Melissa this morning talked about, the church exists for people who do not yet go to church. That's why we are here. Jesus said the righteous don't have any need or the healthy have no need of a physician, but the sick do. And so what we're saying is that there are 46,000 people. Did I get that number right? Yep, 46,530 people that are in need of a church home. And I think we can help provide that to them. All right, so let's go to the next slide. So we know where we are. What are we called to be? Put simply, we're called to love all people in relationship with Jesus Christ, which is the mission of Lover's Lane. The way we do that here at Walnut Hill Church is unique. We connect and serve with our neighbors. So the way we love all people in relationship with Jesus Christ is by connecting and serving with our neighbors. We are going to be the best kind of neighborhood church that we can be. All right, that's what we are going to be. And we've been communicating a very clear vision with that, with the executive team of Lover's Lane, saying people drive from all over. People drive from Melissa, Texas to come to Lover's Lane, all right? People walk to Walnut Hill. That's going to be the difference, right? And that's a good difference to have. And so that's who we're going to be. Kind of saying about who we're going to be. Chris, if you go to the next slide. You've heard this before. We're going to be community-inspired, member-owned, and staff-equipped. We are not a staff-led church, all right? We are, and I know you know this. I need you to know that I know this, all right? And Tom knows this, and Melissa knows this, and Chris knows this, and Patty knows this, and Christine knows this, and Bede knows this, and we all know this now. We are not a staff-driven church. If we decide what ministry we're going to do, it has to start by being community-inspired, meaning our neighbors have communicated this in some way, which also means, friends, that we're listening to our neighbors. It means that it's member-owned, all right? It's not just that, yeah, I might come if you happen to have it, but I am there. I am working it. I am showing up early. I am tearing down afterwards. All this stuff that you already know. And then if those two things are true, then it's going to be then it's going to be staff-equipped. The staff, Tom, Andy, Melissa, Chris, we are going to equip you and give you the tools you need in order to do that event, all right? So that's what we're going to be. That's what we're called to do. And then in terms of, if you think of like ideology of the church, Chris, if you can go to the next slide. A while back, we did some kind of just like general demographic search of our churches in our area, right? So if you draw that square again, and you look at the churches in those areas, if you put them on a map, right, from conservative to liberal, and then from, highly outwardly focused to highly inwardly focused, what is represented in our area, right? Because there are 46,000 people who don't have a church home in our neighborhood. What does that mean? That the current churches in our neighborhood are not doing something for those people. And so this is who we believe we're called to be. We've got Grace Bible and Watermark and in some way Good Shepherd doing this kind of conservative outward focused, right? How do you know that they're outwardly focused? Well, if you look at their communications, it's not... So if an inward-focused church, if you say, hey, we're having a youth event, show up at Sally's. Okay, okay, Sheila's saying go slower. I get so excited, Sheila. Okay, I'm going to go slower, and I'm going to try to move my mouth really wide so you can follow me. Anyways, an inward-focused church by going to their communications and saying, they say, show up at Sally's on Tuesday. Well, who is Sally? Where does she live? Right? What time do I show up there? Anyways, those are kind of like inward-focused things, right, that everybody knows about. We are called, invited to be outward-focused, and this via media, this middle of the road that really appeals to people who are left of center and right of center, right? We are going to be this kind of church that is going to be about Jesus. That's what we're going to be about. And Jesus frustrated conservatives and liberals, all right? And so every once in a while, we're going to do that. Not because we want to frustrate conservative and liberals. That's not my goal. My goal is to talk about Jesus. And I always say that if at the end of a sermon, everybody is equally frustrated, I've done my job, all right? Really, right? You don't want to come and hear a sermon about, anyways. Okay. Thanks, Joanne. All right, let's go to the next slide, Chris, before I get in trouble. All right, so this is the thesis statement of my presentation. By the end of 2023, sorry, I'm in your way, we are going to do these 4 things. We are going to develop a clear communication strategy. Thank you, Chris. All right, that is something we will have done by the end of 2023. We will develop, I can even say implement, a clear communication strategy. That is what we will do. That will include website, email, bulletin, print materials. All of those things will be within a clear communication strategy. Banners, advertising. If you have an event, how do we promote it? What are the qualifications for promoting it? how do we communicate it not only to our membership, but to our friends, our family, and our neighbors? How does our communication empower you to share what you are doing within our church? That is all going to be a part of our communication strategy. We are going to develop 3 excellent worship experiences. We have 2 excellent worship experiences, deaf ministry that happens at 9:30 and 11 a.m. traditional worship that happen here on Sunday mornings. We are going to continue to develop that, as well as start a new modern worship experience that happens here on this campus. What does that mean? What will that look like? How will that affect traditional worship? We do not yet know. All right, we don't know what time it's going to worship, when it's going, we believe it's going to be in the sanctuary, but we're still working all of that out, okay? So don't spin out of control yet on that point, but we are going to do that by the end of 2023. We are going to create clear discipleship models. Wait.
For the traditional worship service today, is there an actual committee that comes up with what that format is, or are we just following Lover's Lane?
There is not a committee. We are not following Lover's Lane. That the current order of worship is ultimately my responsibility. As the pastor, the book of discipline is really clear that the pastor has a few main responsibilities, and one of them is worship. And so led church. Yes. How can our worship be yes. No, I think we have a worship committee. We have a worship team. Yeah, well, yeah, that's what the team is, right? It's a worship team. That's a good point. We have a worship committee. So we have Judy Smith, Nancy Barnes, and then Tom, Melissa, myself, and Christine. And Kathy Bell, who are part of that. And I guess that is a worship, yes. Once a month we meet, yeah. To talk about worship, to talk about the next month, we're having a big meeting this Tuesday and we're planning for the rest of the year. So we'll be planning the rest of the end of 2022. Yeah. And so, if you have, so it sounds like there's something more behind that question. I think any 3-4 of us would love to talk to you more after this about what that looks like. And yeah.
Thank you, Kathy. This is Tom. I just wanted to let you know that we are following the Lover's Lane sermon series. Is that what you were asking? Okay.
The order.
Okay.
Format of worship. Well, and the format, I'm coming to you a second, Joe. The format for worship is really just out of the United Methodist hymnal, is the kind of general order. So that's where it came from. Not that it has to be that way, but that's where it came from. Joanne? No, I haven't gotten there yet. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'm getting there. I have point number 3, create clear discipleship models for all ages. Yes, ma'am. So I'm sorry, Joanne's comment was about not having said anything about Sunday school. Yes. Great. Yeah. Good. Thank you for sharing that, Joe. So Joe's comments were about, thank you for putting the actual order of worship in the bulletin, and then the standing and reading of Scripture together. I think was a good piece that will continue as well. Create clear discipleship models for all ages, all right? And so we are going to continue to have vibrant Sunday schools, strong communities that we have. I'm going to get to be with Joe's class, Joe and John's class in, when is that? Well, I know it's Journey, but I'm going to be there on the 2nd. Is that this Sunday? Next Sunday. I've started reading, but I need to read up on Numbers. Get ready. It's the most fun book of the Bible that Joe gave me. No, I'm kidding. No, but it's gonna be really good. And then I think I've already got scheduled for the Hebron class as well. I forget what date that is, but I'm gonna be there as well. So I'm gonna be a part of the Sunday schools and do more work to be a part of that. So we're gonna create clear discipleship models for all ages, and we're gonna continue to develop risk-taking missions. So I've asked Fran to help us on developing missions, and we're gonna work more in that area, as well as, Becky was there. We are going to take a trip. We're going to do stuff. We're going to, each month, we're going to have an opportunity to engage in mission stuff, again, that you guys have all already done. You guys know what this is. And I need you to know that we know what this is. Chris, well, let me ask this. What questions, these are the goals where we plan to be by the end of 2023. I have a lot more slides after this, but I don't want to take the time to go through all of them ad nauseum. What questions do you have about these points of where I believe we are going to be by the end of 2023? Oh, good. Okay, Sheila. Yeah. So Sheila's point was, we didn't get here today overnight, and we're not going to get there overnight, right? It's going to take participation from everybody, right? We are going to be community-inspired, member-owned. That's the way that we're going to get here, and I think we can do it. I mean, this is not an insurmountable hill. This is something that we can definitely do, but if we're going to do it, we're going to do it together, and it's going to be by us, and it's going to be work worth doing. And we'll be there every step of the way. Yeah. Other questions? Elisa.
Thank you so much for going through all of this with us. So for the worship experiences, I know you and me checked in and you kind of, we have one 11 o'clock service. You kind of shared what a second one would look like, being more modern. Yeah. Maybe for younger members of our community or families. And then what would I'm just curious, is there
Tom's
the third
worship,
one would
so the
look,
deaf ministry is that happens at 9:30.
Okay, cool.
And we're going to do everything we can, like the Deaf Ministry Awareness and Grill Day that we had. Was that last Sunday? Feels like a year ago. That we had last Sunday, and Tom and I were just talking about and emailing back and forth about the things that we can do for our traditional worship community to feel a part of that deaf ministry that happens at 9:30. Being able to say good morning, right? Does everybody remember how to say good morning? Good morning, right? I told Melissa, Tom, I've noticed this. I don't know if this is true, but if your hand is taken up, like if one hand is holding something, I've seen people do this. So just good and then morning. And what I've found is that you mouth or say the words that you are trying to say so that they can read your lips. And if I've seen an interpreter, I see them very expressive about the sign that they're doing so that they're trying to communicate in their whole body what they're trying to do. And so if you see somebody who is here as a part of deaf ministry, be sure to tell them good morning, and it's super simple to do. But we're going to continue to empower Tom and equip Tom and equip the members of deaf ministry and equip ourselves to help do that ministry. And so when it comes time for those things, we're going to continue that work, and that's going to be really work worth doing. And I'm really, really proud to be a part of it. Yes, yeah.
So our deaf ministry is going to be supplementing our children program in the morning. On the first and third Sundays of the month, we have two of our deaf members working with the children, learning a song and a sign language and some other activities. And also we're trying to provide something at 11 o'clock as well. And so we want to continue to provide ASL and deaf awareness in our children's Sunday school program.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, so I I think that, okay, any other questions? If you have more, you can find me, Tom or Melissa. I think Susan's heading to a baseball game. Is that right?
I'm bringing my daughter to lunch for her birthday.
Oh, of course, yeah, you got to go do that. So
Baseball's over.
we don't want to hold Susan too long. And then, yes,
Yeah, Kathy.
One more question.
Please.
Sorry, can you go back to the agenda slide from your meeting?
Hey, Chris, can you go back to the agenda slide for the last board meeting? I want to say, I said this during church last Sunday, and I'll say it again. You are welcome to the board meeting. So we will continue to communicate when the board meetings are, and you are welcome to those meetings. Only the members of the board meeting can vote at those meetings. I can't even vote at the meeting, like I said, because I'm ex officio, but you are welcome to those meetings. So those are not closed meetings by any means, but go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I missed that meeting, and I apologize for that. But and I liked all the information that you shared today, but I guess what I was expecting from this was what actually is being discussed at the meeting and who's taking the initiative, the lead on those initiatives so that we understand what's really going on. I mean, neighboring initiative, okay, well, what does that mean?
Great.
Who's doing what?
Yeah.
So in the future, can we expect either a town hall or something in writing that just tells us what is actually being discussed at the meetings and who's leading those, so that if we do have questions about specific items, we can follow up with someone?
No, that's a great question.
Yeah, I was traveling during this meeting, and Justin wasn't able to be there, so Don took minutes. And so whenever we get those, I'm happy to distribute those to anyone who would like that information. Yeah.
And just to let you know, Kathy, so yeah, we talked about a few kind of goals and initiatives at the beginning of our board meeting this year. And so these were kind of three things that we said were top priority. Neighboring initiative was really just an initiative to get to know our neighbors better. So we walked neighborhoods a while back at the beginning of the summer. We're getting ready to start small groups in our community. So that's what neighboring initiative is. Melissa's name is next to that on our agenda item. New community, we're getting ready to start a new worshiping community. We've had a few meetings. We're getting ready to now have a core team meeting where we make some plans before we kind of go public again. So we've got about 12 people who are part of that core. Brian Dugan, Jan and Bill Evans, Stacy and Brent Houston, Rachel Joyner are all part of that. That we're going to be meeting at Melissa and I's house. Sounds like Monday, October 10th at 6 p.m. to kind of talk about, that'll be more of an internal meeting that we talk about who are we going to be, right? So we kind of did some outward-focused stuff where we shared information about what we're doing. Now we're doing some more inward-focused stuff, and then we'll do some more outward-focused stuff. Property development is that thing that really I've asked Chris to kind of lead. The building and property vision for what happens here on this campus is what that agenda item is. Church program calendar, we simply say these are the things that are coming up, right? Part of that church program calendar was a discussion on Christmas Eve at 5 p.m. and whether or not the board would participate in a Christmas Day worship experience. The only thing that was voted on and approved at this last meeting were the minutes of the previous meeting. So this was more of an informational meeting than anything else. And I would say of our meetings, it's been more informational than approval. I think probably the only approvals that we've made are to disperse some of our restricted funds that were not being used for the general budget. And those were things like the van maintenance fund. We don't have a van. Okay, so let's approve the disbursement of those funds so we can do this. The last thing we voted on was the approval of moving our account from Comerica. Well, it was within Comerica. So it stays within Comerica, but it goes to a different account number. That requires board approval. It doesn't really affect anything that much, but it just moves that money, and we have to document that we did that. Those are the kind of, you've been to it, these are the things that are being generally approved at those meetings. And I think we can definitely do a better job of communicating what happens at those meetings. So I thank you for that question. Joe and then Don.
Where would be the appropriate setting Where would be the appropriate setting for input to come from? For instance, our Sunday school class this morning was dealing with Leviticus and ritual and holiness, and thus what happens in worship here in this sanctuary. Yeah. There were a lot of things that came up from the depths of people's souls. Where would be the appropriate place for that information to be shared and input to be back and forth?
Kathy's guess was that I was going to hear a lot about that next Sunday. When in Numbers I talk. Okay. So I think Melissa and I. So as you saw in that slide earlier about the executive pastor, Melissa is taking over the worship and production piece, and so I think Melissa's the main one who's kind of organizing the worship that happens here, and so Melissa or I would be the main ones where you can hand off that information that we can take it to our worship team. Is that okay? Don?
Real quick comments. One, thank you for this meeting, and I think this did come out of our board meetings and discussions that we felt it was important that more information get to the congregation. As you remember, we used to have what was called admin board meetings, ad council, those kind of activities were one way to get this information out. Now we have this option and better communications as we're moving along. So that's part of our board's commitment and the staff, our senior staff leadership. And the only other last comment was, Andy, on that chart, I noticed you didn't have any direct responsibilities, so we may need to add a few. Thank you very much. I've got to go to a grandson's baseball game.
Thank you for being here, Don, and thank you for adding that before you exit the building. Yeah.
Because Andy's responsibilities are on another slide entirely.
Susan keeps taking responsibilities from me. She's like, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. I'm like, you know what, that's a good idea. Our hope is to have these meetings quarterly. And so we talked about having them every month, but honestly, each month, the information does not change all that much from board meeting to board meeting. Again, you're welcome to be at the board meeting to hear what happens. And we will continue to improve our communication on what happens at those meetings, but we'll also have quarterly town halls where you can ask these kinds of questions. I'm going to go ahead and close us in this meeting, and then if there's anything else you need, I'll be here. Melissa will be here for just a little while longer so that you can ask more questions and share more things. But I really appreciate you all being here. And again, this is recorded, and we'll send the link out to those who missed it so that they can hear more about this event as well. Tom, will you pray for us as we leave here?
Didn't know I could dance, did you? Let us pray. O gracious, loving God, from whom all blessings flow, we give you thanks and praise for your steadfast love for us and for this church that is called Walnut Hill. We pray for your blessing upon our leaders and upon our laity and staff and the pastors. We come to you, Lord, seeking to be faithful to your vision during some times of transition and change and challenges. We ask for your Spirit to fill us, to continue to inspire us, to lift us forward, and to also look to those gifts which have made us unique. We ask that you would use these arms of the church to be your witness to a neighborhood and community which is seeking your face but may not be looking in the right places for that. So be with us as we be faithful to the call and to be faithful to the one who has called outsiders to be part of your kingdom home. In Christ's name we pray. Let the people say,
Amen. Thank you, Tom. Yep. Go in peace.